I'm going to do a quick overview of my truck today and explain how we got it to this point so far. So this is about a 3-year build, and I've had this truck since I was 15, and this is its third build up. And I'll put in a picture here of when I bought it and the second go around with the 4-link and all that, and then this time building it on a 98 Dodge Ram 1500 chassis, and the reasons I did that. Took the 98 Dodge truck, cut the body off, cut the bed off, and used the engine, the frame, the engine, transfer case, and all the wiring that went with it. So it still has all the Dodge power steering, power brakes, air conditioning. So the frame is all 98 Dodge Ram, and the front springs, it's all 1500 Dodge Ram. The steering box was left in the same location. The control arms are still the stock control arms. Even the shocks are stock. So this has no lift on it, and I was able to fit 37s on it. So the Ram that I bought was only $500, and it ran and drove, and everything worked on it. And it even had a rebuilt Jasper trans in it. So getting that whole truck for $500 was awesome. So to fit the body and bed on that frame, since it was a quad cab, it was way longer than this truck. So what we did was cut out 18 inches out of the frame, and that's another reason why I like the Dodge trucks. One, because they're cheap, and two, to shorten or extend the frame, the way they built these things, you can put this light up here. So this is where the two parts slide together. So we cut all these rivets out, took these cross members out, and then we cut the frame right about here. Took this section out, took this section and slid it inside of this section, and it worked out great. And then bolted it back together in the original rivet location, and had to drill the spring perches into the new place, into their new spot, and it worked out really nice. But I've been driving this thing so to fit the cab on the frame, we actually used the stock Dodge body mounts, but had to relocate them. So these are the body perches that came off of the Dodge truck, and the body pucks and everything. So we saved money there by reusing the stock Dodge stuff. And to mount it to the cab, this is a piece of 2x2 3/16 wall tubing with a nut welded up inside of here, and the bolt goes up in and captures it in. The front part of the cab, these are actually bumper mounts off of a Chevy truck, and I welded those to the firewall, and then used the stock Dodge body mounts on the frame with the rubber isolator to bolt that together. So that was basically free too. The bed is all just 2x4s and 1x6s, 1x12s on the side, with plywood. Just went as cheap as possible on this, with a coat of 1 or 2 coats of Thompson water seal put on there a couple years ago, and this bed has lasted for 5 years probably, through all the mudding we take this thing through, and it gets covered in mud. We just wash it off with a pressure washer, and the stain still stays on there. It's pretty amazing. I'll go over the axles. So we went to the junkyard, me and my nephew, and found the 96 Ram 2500. Got those axles for $400. They're Dana 60s front and rear for a Dodge, and 410s front and rear. They worked out great. This is another reason I went with the Dodge truck, is because I knew I could put heavy axles under it super easy. So there was no modification in putting 1-ton axles under a 1500 Dodge truck, because the track bar, the spring mounts, everything, the coil mounts, everything was the same. The sway bar, we had to go get different mounts off the 96 to make this work. But other than that, they literally bolt up to the same locations as the half-ton axles, the Dana 44s. I put new control arms on this, and they were only like 25-30 bucks a piece from Rock Auto, and obviously new brake hoses, calipers, all that stuff. Even the caliper hoses went into the stock locations. The back, obviously even easier. We did have to move the spring perches on the axle, so we had to cut those off, move them over. Which way? I don't even see the old weld mark on there. We had to move them a little bit. It wasn't much. But either way, you have to cut the perches off, move them over, and then weld them back up. So the back, another Dana 60, using stock shocks. They went in the stock location also. So drive shafts obviously had to be custom made by a drive shaft shop. So you got a couple $100 in each one. There's the front one that was custom made. So another reason I went with the Dodge truck is the fuel injection system on those is pretty easy to work on. Not a whole lot of sensors, and the best part about it is this thing's been sitting in my garage where it's been in the teens down to 0 for about the last 3 weeks. If I just put the key in, turn it. Having this fuel injection, the way this thing runs, and all stock, is night and day difference. It's so nice just to get in, turn the key, and go. So the engine wiring, everything in here is from the Dodge truck except the radiator. So the engine had to be positioned 6 inches rearward. So what we did was mount the body, the fenders, where they lined up best with the axles and the tires. So we had clearance all the way around and it looked right. Then figured out where the engine would go. So the way the Dodge original truck was, the engine sat actually 6 inches more forward than where it is now. So that is one thing that was a little bit of a hassle, was cutting the engine mounts off the frame and the transfer case, cross member, and it all had to be moved back 6 inches. But once we did that, everything does fit in here pretty well. So I have room, at least an inch and a half of clearance on my fans. I'll go over the cooling system a little bit later, but so we do have the stock power steering, AC compressor. AC's not hooked up yet. Another project for another day, but stock alternator, stock, everything on the drive belt system is stock. And that was another reason I went with this, is because of the serpentine belt system. I got so sick of V belts that this thing, it's so nice having this serpentine belt system. Exhaust is the stock exhaust manifolds, stock Y pipe with a converter, down to a Flowmaster muffler, and then duals out the back. Engine wise, it is completely stock. Every sensor, every wire, every nut and bolt is still here, even the brake system. So what I did was I cut the whole firewall mount out of the Dodge truck with the sheet metal, and then grafted that into this firewall. So then the mount for the brake booster is all on its stock mounts. So obviously what I plan on doing with this is taking this truck completely back apart, detailing everything, painting everything, but we've just been driving it for a year to make sure nothing breaks, see what needs to be fixed. But it has the stock anti-lock braking system, the cruise control even works, the fuse box for under the hood of the Dodge is still here, stock master cylinder. Gotta have a little Dukes on in the garage, right? So this side, stock windshield washer bottle went up here. We had to make the mounts for that. All the evap stuff is still on here because I didn't want any check engine lights. It all still works. The coolant overflow, we had to make a mount for that. The battery was a $50 battery tray from Speedway Auto, and the ECM to run the whole thing is down under the battery tray, out of the way. And the vacuum box that's on these things is down there too. I guess since we're here cooling, this is an eBay radiator for a V8 CJ. So it has two 10-inch fans, and I actually was able to fit the stock Dodge AC condenser in the front. I took my headlight buckets, and years ago I made a little incision in them, but the stock Dodge condenser actually fits in the front of these things for the air conditioning. So to run the cooling fans, I did go on Summit and bought this Davies cooling controller. It's a digital controller that you set the temperature on and off at, and you can cut the sensor into the upper hose right here, and this thing has worked great. I've had this in 95+ degree weather, hours on end, and it doesn't overheat. I can let it idle in high 90-degree temperatures, hood closed, and it's never overheated on us. So the mirrors, I don't know if I did a video on these or not, but we kept the stock Dodge mirrors, and I made this mount to mount the stock Dodge mirrors. So obviously we still have some more body work to do on this, but this is about 4 to 5, 6 different pieces of metal maybe. We wanted to keep the stock mirrors so that the wiring was still intact, the heater elements on them work, and the electric, moving them side to side, up and down with a toggle switch, that works also, but I just have to hook that up yet. Fuel tank came off of a 94 Jeep Cherokee, like an XJ Cherokee. So the original Dodge tank went on the side of the frame up there, and there was no room for the way I had this truck set up with the cab, the bed, and I want to do a 4-link on it eventually to put that big side mounted 26-gallon tank back on here. So we took the spare tire mounting off and went to the junkyard, got this tank, and believe it or not, the XJ tank fits perfectly in the frame rails of this Dodge truck. So I had to make the gas tank straps, and I put an extra cross member in front of this to give the straps something to hang on to. So to make the fuel pump work in this thing, the original Dodge pump is way taller than would fit in this tank. So I originally cut the stock pump down, that was okay, but it was a lot of work to make that fit. So after a lot of research, I found something that worked out way better. So what I ended up finding out that worked really well is if you take a 2000 Dodge Durango pump, I think it's the 15-gallon tank, it literally fits in the XJ tank perfectly height-wise. It has the same screw-on cap to keep the pump in the tank, and believe it or not, for wiring, the original harness and connector hooks up to this pump, so there's no cutting wires, there's no making stuff work. You literally plug and play. So fuel line going out, you have to run that up this fitting you can get from AutoZone, Napa, whatever, the higher pressure fuel line and fuel injection clamps, one line going up to the front, couldn't be any easier, and then a couple of vacuum lines or breather lines from the tank that go to the charcoal canister. Alright, tires and wheels, we got 37-inch Pro Comp Extreme MT2s on 17-inch by 7, I think, Raceline Rock Crusher wheels with the center caps. So interior wise, so I made these door panels. They're just 1/4-inch Luan plywood with fabric from Walmart that is just glued onto that plywood with Christmas tree fasteners to hide everything. Let's see, carpet was a quick throw together thing. Seat was out of a 98 Dodge Dakota, that fit in there real nice. Seat belts are from the Dakota. So every wire from the Ram and everything in the interior we used wire-wise. So we have the Dodge tilt column. So this is another reason I went with the Dodge truck. Being only $500, I got a nice steering column, the controls that work on it. It's tilt. You have your high beam, low beam flashes over here, turn signals, nice steering wheel, automatic shifter in the same location. We kept cruise control does work off of the steering wheel. Kept the stock Dodge headlight switch. Made a panel that fit around the, this is for the halos, made a panel that fit the column up it out of the way, so there's no problem with sliding into this thing. It's all, you don't even see the column come out past the bottom of the cluster here. Another reason I kept the whole truck as a donor was every wire was able to be unhooked, not cut, and plugged back in, but it had to be shrunk down because the other truck was so much wider. Kept the same fuse panel up under here. Here you can see where I sort of cut in the Dodge firewall mount for the column and the pedals. So that whole thing, it goes all the way over to here, was cut out and used. OBD2 connector. The stock Dodge parking brake system. Shifter ended up in the right location. One of the things that took the longest was the gauges. So these Willys have a gauge cluster that's a big round one. So I've seen other people put their Dodge clusters in and hang them from underneath, but I wanted to make this look a little nicer. So we took the whole cluster and made it fit in this opening. So this is probably one of the things that took the longest, was to make this work and make it look nice around the edges. So think I have a video of how I did that, but so basically I took the cluster, put a coat hanger around the outside to give me the perimeter of it, held that up to where I wanted it to be centered in the dash, and then put a marker line around the coat hanger at the frame, cut it out, and then just had to make pieces to fill it in over here. And the only wiring I had to extend was there's 2 plugs behind this that go up to the firewall. There was about 8 wires on each plug that had to be extended about a foot to make this work. The heating air conditioning box is still the massive box off of the Ram, but we had to cut it almost in half, and here's the switch for that. The wiper system, so it does work off of the delay wiper system, works off the column, and that was probably one of the hardest things to figure out also. So this is how my wipers are set up. I don't know how they came originally, because all that stuff was ripped out when I got the truck years ago. So to make the wiper system work, I used the stock Dodge wiper motor, and it's kind of ugly, but made a mount that welded right to the body, so if your truck is painted, it's going to mess that up. But to make this system work, I had to make almost the whole linkage system. So the motor is stock with the stock wiring, which was nice, and then the arm coming off the motor is from a CJ, and then this part is off of a CJ, and then make the rest of the linkage that goes up in there. And the windshield washer squirter is a single one in the front that does work off of the column. All in all, not real expensive either. Just buying the other truck, it just takes time. So the reason I went with the Dodge truck, second gen Dodge truck, is I wanted the front axle, solid front axle with the 4-link bars, so that when I long arm the front of this thing, those brackets are already there. So the automatic transmission also, the way I made that work was, so making the shifter for the automatic trans, one other thing was the steering. I had to lengthen the steering shaft about a foot to make that work. I just saw that since I'm under here. The automatic trans shifter, I had to make this bracket for the frame that goes over to the original bracketry, so that wasn't too hard. It was just making this mount and figuring out the adjustability for it, so it wasn't too bad. The other reason I used this Dodge truck was just ease of driving now. So when I get in this thing, I just start it, all the gauges work. You can literally just drive it like a regular automatic truck, put it in the gear, there you go. So another thing I did was kept a book on all the parts used on this thing. So I got the truck I bought for $500, and as I had parts, wrote down every day where I got them, what I paid for it, which parts came from where, wheel bearings, fuel pump stuff, all the hoses, brake shoes, everything. Every time we did something, we just made a list, and then I inputted it into a Google Drive document and was able to keep every part labeled, where I got it, what the numbers are, so that I can just go back to this book and find out everything, all the parts of it. I ran the stock VIN on the stock truck and got everything that came on the original truck, which actual ratio, the engines, kept all the stickers off the old truck, the original truck, took pictures of all the stickers that were under the hood, data for the axles, what they came off of, any of the sensors to familiarize myself with those. This is all the stuff I ordered for the brake part. If I didn't know where a wire went or a color, I took a picture of that, the block, and take lots of pictures and video. There's the fan switch for the thermostat for the electric fans, where all the fuses go, rear window gasket stuff, and molding. I printed out different wiring harnesses just so I have them, so I can trace if there's problems. Wheels and tires. Wheels and lug nuts. $5.80. Parts for the Durango fuel pump. So weather stripping parts. Front drive shaft, $2.90 to have that made. Tail lights, halos. I probably have about, well, the tires and wheels were $2,000, and the rest of the truck was probably another, I'm just guessing, $2,000 in extra parts, and the rest of it is all just time and labor. So for around $4,000, basically, we're able to put this together. So that's a quick overview of it, and you got any questions on something, let me know. Well, that's about it for this one. It went a little longer than I wanted. So thanks for watching. See you on the next one.